The Underground, Ideas into Action presents an Underground Chat, where we bring the underground conversation to you.
Today's chat, Cultivate a Digital Mindset, with Stephen Bohanon, founder and chief strategy and sales officer at Alkami.
So let me start with just welcoming you, Stephen. It's great to see you. And I think that we've all been through quite the transition in the last 6 months. So tell me first, how's your family? How's the credit union family? How's the Alchemy family? How are you guys doing?
Well, our family's doing great. We are, we're empty nesters. So we don't empathize as much with the people that have to do the homeschooling and everything, but I can only imagine what it would have been like when our kids were smaller to have them here all the time. So, because they generally want you to entertain them somehow or to do something for them. So, no, it's been great. Obviously not been on the road nearly as much. I've been on the road twice as all in the last 6 months, which is very odd. And obviously travel isn't quite as pleasant as it used to be now with a lot of the new restrictions and various rules and things. So, no, it's been great. I think it's also been good just in the summer because, being able to enjoy the outdoors and, play some golf and tennis and different things. So, no, I think there's there's plenty of cons with what's happening, but there's been the pros of, more connectedness, more time together. It's amazing what you have to find. You have to find things to do when there's no sports on television, there's no movies to go watch. You get to spend a lot more time just talking and hanging out. So I think that's been a real big positive.
I think that's excellent. It's we're going through this time of transition, which I think those first couple weeks were all about, wow, how are we going to deal with this, and how's the business going to deal with it? And then we get to a certain point where let's move forward. And I'm finding that these conversations, even though we're doing Zoom or we're doing some type of a virtual platform on a regular basis, the conversations are a little bit more intimate because we don't have all that noise around us. When you think, even when we've had the opportunity to meet and be at conferences, there's this short period of time, and then there's other folks around. So the networking isn't in person, but it's actually increased, if you will, my valuable time with people. Have you found that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's like with a lot of things, right? It's like, you get kind of too much of a good thing. I do think that I think the thing I miss the most about it and not being in the office on a regular basis are just the unplanned interactions that you have, just running into somebody in the hall or walking by their office and noticing them and just checking in with them for a couple of minutes. So now it's like every meeting we have or every interaction we have is absolutely planned. It's on the calendar. And so I do think that some of those other things that sometimes would be the bright spot of your day, you miss out on some of those things just because you don't have as much unplanned interaction time with people. So I miss that personally, but I totally agree with you on the flip side. There's some positives to it as well.
Yeah. Well, I, like you, travel 90%, in my case, about 90% of the time. So it's been an interesting time. My husband and I are reconnected. He said to me, I don't think, in all of our years of marriage, we've always had a remote business. And so we're in business together. We're also, been married. And so it's been an interesting time adjusting to that as well. So it's kind of fun. It's great.
We said either people are going to, renew their vows or get divorced with this thing, one or the other.
Well,
there's going to be a decision point somewhere or the other.
Yeah, I think that might be a daily conversation.
Nice.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's happening from a business standpoint. What I want to start off with is the idea that we went from this in-person powerful session in February where we're talking about this Maslow hierarchy of needs, and we're all kind of at the basic level, or we're all throughout the hierarchy. And now we found ourselves very quickly in, the safety, which you addressed, and it was a great conversation. So now we fast forward and we've seen this warp speed reaction to the crisis and to the virtual engagement. And I know you're part of that transition for your clients. So I wanted to get your ideas about this whole reactive response to COVID, to the pandemic, and the rush to safety. How do you think the credit unions are doing? What are your observations on that?
We had several credit unions that were set to do their convert. So let me talk about first, just in terms of the credit union's operations, just in general, outside of digital banking or anything. And the way that was demonstrated to us was really with several of them that had implementation projects. We had a few that had asked to put them on hold, but generally just for a couple, 3 weeks. So they'd asked to push back their conversion dates. And it was mainly out of not that they didn't want a new digital banking platform, but they were saying, look, we're trying to get our feet under us, ensuring that everyone can VPN in, that everyone can have access to the network, that we're kind of getting settled on what we're going to do with our branches. You remember in the beginning, it was very, very hectic and confusing around what could be open, what couldn't be, whether or not you would, what the rules were, kind of thing. And so I think that there were daily task force meetings probably with many of our customers where they're saying, hey, we got to figure out what state we're going to be in for, until the next data point comes across. But what we saw is that they actually got there fairly quickly. Several of them went ahead as planned, didn't skip a beat. A couple of them said, hey, can we get 2 or 3 weeks? And we were able to work with them to kind of move it back. But no one that really kind of moved out, many months or anything like that because of that. So to me, that was an indication that they actually responded pretty quickly and got their act together and were able to, do something as big as, a digital banking platform. And this is such a disruptive event generally to an institution because it touches every part of, every employee and obviously every member. So I thought that from zero a change or delay to maybe a delay of maybe 3 or 4 weeks at the most, that was all we saw. And so we've already launched, I think, 15 or 16 credit unions quote remotely during this time. And so I think they're going along business as usual with whatever the new normal, however temporary that may be, is. So I thought, it was very, very impressive. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to hear that. When you think about not only the transformation that was taking place for all of us, but the idea that they're transforming and pushing forward on initiatives that are going to be critical in the future. The reality is if we can't communicate on a digital level, how are we going to communicate? And transactions making that switch and so on. I think as I look to the next phase of this, it's fascinating to hear people talking about maybe going back. And I don't mean away from the platforms, but really, opening all the branches again, opening and all of the in-person again. And I'm somewhat fascinated with the concept of high tech, no touch. In other words, I may not be that next generation user, but I don't want to go back in that same way. I want to have advisory services. I want to have a different level. So what do you think about that? Do you think we're going to go back or are we going to fast forward?
Well, I think there's certain things, obviously, there are certain things you're going to go back to, obviously when it comes to restaurants, right? Like, you want to go back out and eat. It's nice to go out and eat and not have, we've been doing DoorDash and Uber Eats, I guess 90% of the evenings, when there's 2 people, it doesn't make a lot of sense to cook a meal. So going out to eat, we went out to a stand-up comedy club a couple of weeks ago that was open. That was so refreshing to get out and laugh with other people. Those kinds of experiences where really you kind of want to be in person and in the room to really enjoy what it's about. I think certain other industries, like it's something I've been harping on for a long time. I hope the movie industry, I hope that changes forever because I've been for a long time saying, I wish I could, I'll pay extra to get a movie the day it comes out and watch it in the comfort of my home instead of having to go to the movie theater and sit in those nasty chairs, so that's an experience, but some people may say, hey, we like to be at the movie theater. I think things like sports events, part of the nice things about sports events is going and feeling the crowd and the cheering and being there while it's happening as opposed to just watching it on television. So I think there's certain things where kind of the emotional response that we get from it, we're going to want to go back to how it was because there's something special about that really made us feel connected to other people. But then in many other things, and I know that sometimes that credit unions and banks feel as though, they hold that same place in their members' heart, but I would probably argue against that. I would say that if they didn't have to go in, that like they're not looking for a best friend when they come into the credit union. They're not looking for someone to hang out with. They're looking for someone that can help them with their problem or to help them get that loan or to explain to them various savings options and things like that. But there's no requirement that they, quote, get to know you. in order to do that. They get to know your brand for sure, and your people are a representation of that brand. But I would just say that's probably a little bit different. And so, when I look at companies, obviously, like Amazon's a great example. And I mean, how much do we love Amazon right now, right? I mean, we've been Prime members since day one, and in Dallas here, they even have like, Prime, Prime One or Prime Same Day or whatever. And I don't know that I've ever met an Amazon employee. I know I've never been into an Amazon branch, that's for sure. And I have an incredible high degree of loyalty and appreciation for Amazon. And in fact, almost anything that we buy, the first thing we say is, we'll check Amazon first. And if it's there, we're going to get it there because we can count on their service. We can count on what they're going to, even if it's, a little cheaper somewhere else, I don't care. Just buy it through Amazon. It's just so easy, right? So, and that is a relationship I almost feel like I have with them. And I've never met anyone from there. Even the people that come to the door, like there's packages there. I don't,
Yeah.
So I do think that what we should return to well, I guess the point being is that I think you can actually carry on a relationship and cultivate a high degree of loyalty in a customer life by offering them fantastic services that leverages technology to do that. And that will kind of create that customer for life or that member for life scenario, that loyal member, and that you don't have to have a physical face-to-face interaction for financial products in order to accomplish that.
It's interesting. The whole concept is fascinating to me, and a few things came to mind. But the first one I'll start with is that I too am an Amazon user, and we've gotten to the point where we really used to go out and do a little bit of shopping so we can compare, and now it's like, let's just do it. We know it'll be here tomorrow. Let's just move forward. But what makes that happen for me is, as you've indicated, Amazon Prime. I know that I can get it, and if I've forgotten a birthday, I get it tomorrow. I get it today. I get it, very timely. It's seamless. I don't have to go to, a few different platforms. I even found early in this phase where we were looking at grocery supplies and things like that, where I'm trying to figure out how to navigate these different stores and do ordering. And I found myself even going, why isn't Amazon in this space? Right? And so I think consumers have been patient because they too have been dealing with what's going on in the world. But I think we're going to get less patient now with our seamless financial services experience. What are your thoughts in that area?
You mean less patient with things that aren't seamless?
Yes, I mean, I don't want to go. I know that the different levels of who I use for banking and so on.
Without a doubt, right? Yeah, without a doubt. If anything, because what you see is coming out of this is there's definitely a group of winners that are emerging from this. Those that invested early on in digital delivery and service that way. And by the way, I think just when I made the comment earlier about face to face, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with face to face, but like right now we're face to face.
Right.
And I will tell you this, because we have a few of our customers that are pretty leading edge, and they've already started. One of them specifically, I'm thinking of, that had already started turning their call center into video booths and saying that they just believe that's the future of the service. Is that this will be how face-to-face interaction happens. Not you got to come into the branch to see me, because some people I want to look at you in the eye. I want to see if you're trustworthy. Those kinds of things, right? Some people will want that. I think one of the great things that'll come out of all this is that video-based services for video chat and stuff, I think that this will skyrocket, that people that initially thought, oh, I don't want to do that, it will become normal for them. I sat on the Dallas Regional Chamber, and I saw one of the companies that they're showing some stats around how they were doing around telemedicine and the huge uptick they've seen in telemedicine, and that they think that it will actually stay, because a lot of people hadn't tried telemedicine. And in fact, quite honestly, the first time I tried it and I was able to do a video call and have them look at my throat, through the phone to see it. And they said, oh, it looks like you've got this. And then my prescription's ready without having to go in and fill out the form and sit in the office and wait and go back and have my blood, all the things. I went, I will never go to the doctor's office again if I don't have to. And so I think that what you're going to see is that the people that have taken advantage of those and showed that in this, they actually had those tools available and they can do that. You're right. Now it sets a standard. Now someone says, oh, we don't have telemedicine. You have to come in. I go, I'll just find another doctor. That's what's going to happen. I think the same thing will absolutely happen to a financial institution. Hey, can we hop on a video call real quick? I have a few more questions about this loan. And, oh, sorry, we don't have that. Oh, I'll just find another institution. So I do think that the consumers will absolutely change their expectation for what you happen to have. If you can't FaceTime with them, like, what are you, 2019, So I definitely think that will change the way people think about the financial services. And so the way that ultimately trickles, or the way that ultimately changes the way that the credit unions have to think is, maybe don't remodel that branch or don't open that new location. Instead, go invest in a great digital service system that has video and chatbots and all of that kind of included as part of that. So I definitely think it should shift the way, if they're still investing heavily in any sort of physical footprint, they can do so as long as they've got enough to where they're not having to neglect the digital service channel as well.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a hybrid solution. Absolutely. When I think about my own experiences and I think about our colleagues and what we've gone through, I'm actually less tolerant of people that don't have good service. So when we went through this process initially, it was okay. Everybody had all these different experiences when it came to their video engagement. And now it's like, okay, I'm pushing my boards and the people that we work with and saying, it's time for you to literally enhance the video experience, because strategic governance has to allow great conversations, and having somebody on a phone, having somebody on a speakerphone isn't the same, as you said, of looking them in the eye and having the conversations.
Yeah, that's right. It's really going to, and here's the other thing that I think that the next big problem that and we're already dealing with it. Obviously, a lot of credit unions are already dealing with it, but I think one of the things that we're helping to help solve is identity verification. Because as we go more and more to digital, that's more of an opportunity for fraudsters to take advantage of that, right? And so being able to do identity verification for net new members, for the fact that you're interacting with a member and stuff, I would not be surprised if it will be something in the near future. If some aren't already say, hey, in order to do that transaction, I actually need to get on a quick video call with you and just hear you. Because it used to be you need to come into the branch to do that. And I think what the alternative is, hey, that's fine, but we do require, a 60-second video call with you to do that, right? Just to kind of verify who you are. So I think that what you're going to see is some of this technology, whether it be video or other ways. So Alkami's actually worked on some things around this that you're going to want to make sure I can serve everyone, but I got to still verify they are who they say they are in order to help them financially, or to move money for them, or to open up an account for them and things like that. So I think you'll see a bit of that. I'll tell you a funny little story. I was playing around with buying some Bitcoin, about a year ago.
Yeah.
And just going through the process of this, because I'm thinking, well, how do you do this? Because, once you turn the money into Bitcoin, it's traceless. And so I remember I used my debit card to do that, and it was fine because I just put like $100 on there just to see the process. And the payment, it was really interesting. The company that was taking the payment to actually turn it into Bitcoin, well, I actually had to send them a picture. They have the instructions on, holding two fingers on the card where they can see the last four and the first four of the card. And I had to smile, and I had to have it all in this thing. And they called it a verification selfie. So I actually had to take a selfie, and I uploaded that. And I want to say within 60 seconds, I got a message back saying, we verified you, you can do the transaction. I thought, well, that's really kind of interesting now, leveraging, because they already had my driver's license. So they were comparing my picture to my driver's license and then making sure that I had the actual card in my physical possession. And they used it, and it was actually very slick. I thought, now that is a pretty cool way to verify somebody.
See, and I want to pursue that. I was just talking with the CEO about their upcoming planning session, and we were talking about digital transformation and all the things that they're working on. And the conversation switched to authentication and the idea of verification. And we were talking about what are the sources going to be, because obviously fraud is increasing. And so based upon what you just said, signature cards going away. Our iPhones, right? They're doing biometrics pretty much on face recognition and so on. When I look at this going forward, I find that very fascinating, that instead of potentially going to another currency, we could be using the tools that we're seeing revolutionize how we communicate right now, become the next generation of AI in the sense of authentication. Is that, conceptually?
Yeah, right, yeah, because there's a couple different things. One, we actually are rolling out a product called Digital ID actually in just a couple of months, where it's basically leveraging a biometric enabled device to authenticate you through the call center and other channels. So But that does assume that you've already at least passed one authentication to get in and to register that device as a trusted device and then do it that way. But what about before that? What about when I'm opening a new account, for instance? Or maybe I have already authenticated, but gosh, I'm wanting to wire $100,000 internationally somewhere, right? Maybe that goes up and say, hey, we need to put the brakes on. I can't just have you enter a one-time passcode that I texted you for this one. I need to see someone, but it'll be really quick. Just open up a quick FaceTime thing. I'm going to turn on record you saying for 5 seconds, hi, I'm Stephen Bohanon and I authorize this wire. I save that in the system. Those types of things, you're going to see more of that. I promise you. We're going to be using video and other kind of digital channels to raise our authentication verification as well as identity verification. So I think it's kind of exciting though. It's kind of neat. And you're already seeing it in other things. You're seeing it in dating apps where people don't want to get catfished, and so they're doing things more and more to identify. So I think you have that issue all around. But the tried and true way of identity verification used to be you come into the branch, you've got your government issued ID, someone sits across from you who's trained to ask you certain KYC questions and things like that. That's got to all go away. And how do I replace that effectively, right? So. I think we're going to see lots of creative ideas come out of this.
I love it. I think that when I think back to the time that I actually signed the signature card, and frankly, it's been quite a few years, in a lot of the cases of the accounts that I have, my signature's changed. And so it's always been somewhat of a joke for me that that's the verification. So as we move forward, I'm excited by the technology. I'm excited by the transition. I wonder what tough questions we're going to have to ask each other and ask our CEOs and ask our industry, because when I think about the cultures and the idea that personal service means in-person service, for me that's been antiquated for years. Mm-hmm. I think that it does, the personal experience is appropriate in some situations, but for me convenience has always been the key. And so as I look down the road and I hear people saying we're going to go back, I understand we need the footprint. I understand that we need the visibility within the market. And sometimes that comes from locations that are repurposed. But do we see the fact that this transition that's happened, this digital transformation, should become a mindset, should become a culture? I know that that's something that you speak to.
Yeah, I think that I think a lot of people theoretically or philosophically, I should say, agree with that. But then you look at their actual action. One of the things we say at Alkami is you can tell a lot about a person or by a company by where they spend their money. You can tell what they value, right? And one of the things that you'll see, and I'm not going to say any Alkami clients are like this, but there may be one or two, is that people say, man, we're all in on digital. We're all in on digital transformation. And then they'll come and they're spending less on their digital banking platform than they spend on one of their branches a year to keep it staffed and to run it, right? But they're all in on digital. And so you I think that's what you ask yourself is, okay, show me your operating budget and show me how much you're spending on physical delivery channel in terms of infrastructure, all your capital cost, all your headcount cost, and all of that. Show me what you're spending there, and then compare that to what you're spending on your digital service channel, right? And then just see. And that should be your first indicator of whether or not you're committed to digital transformation. This would be the first thing. There are definitely situations where you have a product or a service. I mean, you look at what Apple did. Apple initially, remember years ago, Apple didn't have any stores, right? You had to go to an AT&T store, or you had to go to and it was mainly mobile phones. But you ordered everything off the Apple site, even MacBooks and things like that. Maybe Best Buy had it or something. And so they ultimately end up creating stores because they said, we want to create an experience around our product because people need to come and touch it, and they need to be able to play with that Apple Watch, or they need to be able to go and see how interactive that MacBook is, or see how cool the iPhone is. And then we think that we can sell more once they see it and touch it. Well, financial products really aren't like that. There's really not that need I need to come into the store to kind of see how interest rates work, right? Like I don't need to do that, right? So I definitely think that the argument for having those stores there, you really do have to find kind of a a different reason. Now, for some credit unions, and we have some really successful credit unions that do this. They use them as billboards, right? They use them as beacons. It's just a physical presence so that you drive by it every day, and that way, when you see it somewhere else or you hear about them, you go to the auto dealership and you say, "Hey, oh yeah, I know those guys. They have a branch down the street or whatever." So some of them, as long as they're using it strictly as that, and they can prove the ROI that that's actually happening, then that's for it. But I think that if you're if you're a credit union executive and you're agreeing with that, but you're saying, "Oh, but you got to understand, my board," that's what I hear a lot of. I mean, one of the things that you don't see as much in the credit union industry, or I should say, what you see a lot of in the credit union industry is boards that have zero people from technology sectors or anyone from a technology background that's actually there. And it's two things. One, it can lead to you not really having a big focus on investing in digital and there, or it could lead for you being taken advantage of whenever you're looking at making technology investments as well. But one way or the other, you need to have people on your board that are savvy about this, that understand technology. And I know a couple of our clients, in fact, they talked about this problem a couple of years ago, and they set out to specifically either add board seats or to have a kind of ask a couple to retire and then replace them with CIOs in the community or from their member segs and things like that, because they just said, we looked at our board and we're walking in talking about this big digital initiative we want to have, and they're all looking at us like we're speaking German. They just don't get it, right? So I think that you definitely have to have that at the board level, because it is an investment. To transform, you have to invest. And for people that for maybe decades have just known banking as how many branches do you have and how are those branches doing and how many accounts did that branch open and how much foot traffic did that branch have today? And that's just the way they talk, right, in those metrics. Your digital banking system on average handles 40% of your total membership every single day. Think about that. Every single day, 40% of your membership logs in through mobile or online banking. All your branches together don't even come close to that on a daily basis.
Well, when I talk to boards, and that's quite a bit of our work, there's a few things that come to mind when you're talking or your comments. One has to do with how are we going to see the transition there. We have a window of opportunity, and a significant number of board members had to go virtual. And so they've had to navigate virtual meetings. They've had to navigate those pieces. So what are we going to do with that? The second thing is I talk about technology investment, and it never goes away. The reality is that you have either maintenance and maintaining and continuing that access for that 40%, or you have the conversions or the enhancements that we need to be doing. So technology needs to be a constant budget item that isn't questioned. It's just part of what an organization does. I do want to talk about the window of opportunity, though, because to me, I've got a sense of urgency around this, and I really am challenging clients and thought leaders across the country that people had to go virtual because of a crisis. And we have adapted, some better than others, but we are adapting. And there are things we miss. Yes, there's no doubt about that. But efficiencies and costs and things that as we go into the future are going to be critical. Our margins are tight. If we don't use this window of opportunity to step through it, I think that we will have missed a relevance issue that will be long-term.
It's a survivability question. I mean, look, back in 08, 09, credit unions did a great job because the mega banks were being demonized for the situation that our country was in. And you obviously had the great financial crisis and recession that followed there. What you see, though, now is that the satisfaction with those mega banks, those big impersonal mega banks, is at probably an all-time high and is actually recaptured and gained over. And you know why people say? Because of the digital tools that they offer me.
Yeah.
So if you think that idea that you're going to stay competitive because, Harry or Sally or Jim or Bob knows the teller and they like to see him smile. And, we hear these anecdotes all the time, right? And I'm just going, don't be naive. Don't be naive. I know it makes you feel good because you know them by name, but that's not a scalable business. And all you have to look to the future is everyone else that was convinced that business model was going to work. And you just see where they are in business today. So I'm not sitting here saying that no one should have branches. I'm not saying that.
Right.
What I'm saying is if you don't have a leading, kind of a class leading technology service channel, if you don't have that, then you need to steal money from the whatever's going out for physical service and put it there. Now, if you have that already, well, then now it's up to you. You do what you want. You can use those branches how you want. But what I generally see in the market is people that they want to have their toe dipped in technology, but in their minds, you can tell with the way they spend their money and where they think, and their budgets and everything are all over there. We'll get asked sometimes, we'll say, hey, this is your digital branch. And, we kind of go through our system just as an example. And someone says, you mean I might have to hire someone to kind of run this and manage this system? I'm going, well, when you build a branch, do you hire someone to manage it? Well, yeah, but I mean, isn't this kind of an IT function that kind of just kind of runs? I'm like, what? Not if you're doing it right. It's not.
Well, and what you're referring to is the whole idea that it's a cultural shift. So what happens? We used to do quite a bit of consulting around the actual transition or the conversion to technology to get people to adapt. And you're right, it's about survival. But the one issue that I always reinforce is that employees come to work and they want to be able to do today what they did yesterday. So whatever the new technology is, I just want to be able to feel comfortable providing what I did yesterday. So your mindset and your cultural shift has to happen over a period of days, and just say, here's our destination, that's the first step, and here's the roadmap to where we're going to get, because otherwise I will find people unhappy with what they went to, because it really didn't provide us any advantages over what we left. Well, that's because you're not using it any differently, right? Where it's truly about let's assimilate. So with that said, what's going to happen to the social mission? Credit unions are cooperatives, and they're not just transactors. And when we think about our digital engagement, for me, it has to be a seamless transaction. But there's that passion and purpose that goes along with it. So what are you seeing there? What are your thoughts?
I don't think it changes at all. And by the way, just because you don't have as big of a physical footprint, it doesn't mean you can't still do things physically, especially in your community and other ways. So I don't think, if anything, I think it actually gets better. I think that when we look at it in terms of kind of like the ROI that you get back for every dollar you spend on that, right? I think if they'll actually shift more to the technology side, they'll find that their dollars go a lot further, and they're actually able to do a lot more. Maybe they're even able to give better rates and do more things for them. I mean, I think they should embrace this. And again, I don't want to give away too much, because if someone watches some of this later, some customer of mine will call me and say, hey, I know who you were talking about there. but I remember, a client saying, oh yeah, well, we do all this stuff for financial wellness. Yeah, we have a thing at our branch at so-and-so on Tuesday nights. They come in and we teach them how to budget their money. I'm like, why do you do it in a branch? We've got Zoom, we've got all kinds of things. You can reach a lot more people. And plus you can then record it and people could watch it later because maybe they couldn't be there on Tuesday nights, right? So just change your way of thinking. Why are you thinking this has to be done in this way? So I do think that, and sometimes they'll say, oh, well, people won't do that. Well, they will now. They will now, because this is how they're used to doing it. I mean, how many virtual conferences have you attended, right? I mean, so I do think it's a great alternative. I think that, there's some other products and services that I know some credit unions specifically, as they look to get into some other lines of business, one of the main reasons that it's failed or hasn't gone well, and you'll probably know some ones I'm talking about, is because they tried to go in and maybe license people in all the different branches so that they can then sell this other product. Well, if you don't have to worry about that, if you can just offer it online and you don't have to worry about that kind of training and then the turnover that goes along with that, all the kind of things that happen from the branch network, I think you can actually consolidate those funds, and then you can actually have a bigger impact on that. So I don't think the social mission of credit unions changes at all. In fact, it's an advantage to me if you start adopting that mindset, because think about it, you can offer things more efficiently, it's more convenient, really at lower cost, offer the better service. So there's really no reason that the mission should change whatsoever.
100%. And I also think as we use the tools, as I indicated to you when we started, our last undergrad collision was in person. And people said, oh, we're not going to have that vulnerable collaboration if it's not in person. And if anything, we've got thousands, tens of thousands of views now, because the life cycle, the span of when people can see the stories or how they can use them has just really enhanced the message. So I really believe we do have to look at things in a different way, and we can enhance it or we're going to lose it. And I mean that. I look at the generations, and I look at what our patience level is going to be going forward. And all of us want more quality time. So looking at that as a cornerstone. Okay, so we focused on technology. We focused on what's taking place in the world. What 2 items do you think we are critical that people have to think about and put into action?
Well, probably going back to earlier, kind of what we talked about, I do think that just a really just good kind of self-assessment is, I'm just going to go in, I'm going to pull up my budget, and I'm going to see what do I spend on my, I'm just going to say digital banking platform, but I just use that, my digital service channel. That would be probably digital banking plus whatever tools you use from a digital service perspective. And I'm going to compare that to what my total spend is on my physical service channels. I'm just going to just take those 2 comparisons. I'm going to see where that is. And I'm going to ask myself if somebody else came in that didn't know anything about my business and I just handed them my financials, would they think that I've undergone digital transformation or not, based upon looking at that, just looking at the line items in my budget. Right. So just ask them to be real with themselves there.
Love that.
So that'd be do that first. And then I think the next thing would be to, if you have, and the reason I'm saying these things is just because when we hear from our clients about some of the reasons they have a hard time kind of getting digital going as much or getting as much support, I really do think that what I mentioned a couple of our clients did, which is really examine your board. Because if the leadership of if the people that are approving these budgets, if the leadership of your organization is not one that is in sync, and not just in sync, not just philosophically says, yeah, everything's going digital. Well, that's one thing, but then can you help guide us there? Can you help protect us from making, because there's a lot of things digital. There's a lot of bright, shiny objects that come across, right? And so you got to make sure you don't waste money on certain things that don't have value, but at the same time, understanding the value of the things that are there. Make sure that you've got good representation on your board that's there. And if not, try to figure out a way to, maybe bring that up and to change that. I think it's probably one of the biggest, threats to credit unions and their mission and survivability is that irrelevance. And they've got to ensure that from the top down that everyone understands what being relevant in today's culture and society and marketplace means, or else, like the down home goodness stuff, I love it. Just so you know, like I want to get back to the office. I want trade shows in person again. I mean, I'm a people person though. I like to come up and shake your hand, and I like to, I don't know, I just like the sights and the smells and the ambient laughter and conversations and stuff. So that's me, and I know not everyone's like that. So I'm not one of these people that says, oh, let's just all stay in our homes and communicate through 2-dimensional screens here. But I think it's knowing the right place to use that. It's not, we don't have to run our entire business based on that concept. And so I think it's being smart about where does it really make the most sense to use technology to solve this problem, and where does it really make the most sense to where it needs to be physical, or where it makes sense for us so we can survive as an organization. Because, the mega banks, I mean, they're spending on average, just B of A, Wells, Citi, and Chase. They spend on average like $600 to $800 million a year just on their digital banking platform. They spend Chase has got like an $11 billion IT budget a year, right? I mean,
what's that percentage-wise? What percentage is that from
their total budget? That's a good question. I don't know if their total budget. I should know that number.
No, you know what? It's just something for us to come back to, because I think we want to make it relative to our group. So we'll do a little research.
Well, you're already seeing that the big banks here and in the UK, I've already know that a lot of them are announcing that they're actually not reopening some branches that they closed, just hastening that and just saying, hey, we kind of needed to get rid of those anyway.
Well, one of the follow-ups to the point you just made about the boards is we're going through DEI, we're going through all these transitions, and our boards are obviously going to be part of that transition. And what I would say to all of our CEOs out there, based on what Stephen shared, is that you may not be able to do this transformation with the board immediately, but you can set up advisory committees immediately. you could set up a group that educates the board on a regular basis, because we saw from our regulators talking about fintech, we've seen it within the industry. We are going to need to have the technology knowledge to be able to budget and to use our dollars. And I think you're absolutely right. I love the conferences, and I love being able to see everybody and spend some time, saying hello and doing the cheers and all that. I also understand that a business today, small business, big business, we're all going to have to be more mindful of how we spend our time and how we spend our dollars. So I think that's critical. The other third thing that you said today that to me is an ideas into action that we don't want to lose your thought process there is a visual identification. I thought that was incredible. Not that it's an aha moment, because yes, we've thought about it, but the idea that we don't have to necessarily go through a significant transition. We just need the tools made available to us that integrate back into the platforms. So we know we all have iPhones, or we have something similar. We know that the dominance that we have from our major suppliers, and if we can tap back into that, it's excellent. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate your time.
Of course, it's great to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you too. And I tell you,
I can't hug you, but I can at least,
oh yeah,
virtual elbow bumping.
Virtual elbow.